Hello everyone, and happy Saturday. It is February 9th, and I am choosing to take a break from the mastery of love and jump into books that are associated with Black History Month. Quickly, happy Black History Month to everyone, but especially to my beautiful Black people. I just want us to take every single day and every opportunity to celebrate us, to love us, and to not be afraid. For this first edition for our Black History Month on the Critical Hook, I am choosing to focus on two autobiographies. The first one is Malcolm X's autobiography. This is the one that was written by Alex Haley. He also wrote Roots, but I know apparently there are two versions of this book, so that's why I felt the need to mention Alex Haley. That's the book that you should read, because apparently this one's better than the other one. It's really weird, but this is the only one that I've ever known of. So this is one of the autobiographies, and the second one that I wanted to focus on is the Angela Davis biography. So these two. I know initially when I posted this on Instagram and did a poll saying, oh, would you guys be into a Black History Month version of Critical Hook? And the majority said yes. But I showcased these two books just because they were right there on my bookshelf behind me. And you know, they're good books. They're right there. I don't know. And I was also finishing up the Angela Davis book. But when I posted that, it was just for aesthetic purposes. I wasn't initially going to choose these, but somebody, if this somebody watches this video, he knows who he is. And he DM'd me basically saying that these books are kind of quote unquote basic. And I'm pretty sure he didn't mean it as ignorant as it sounds, but I just kept thinking more and more about it, and then I realized it makes perfect sense for me to do this, for me to dive into these two books, because they're actually extremely impactful to me, and I feel like to the Black community in general, at least it should be. These books are amazing, and I'm gonna get into why I chose these books, compare them. Okay, so Angela Davis, for those who do not know, she is an African-American activist as well as an author. She was involved a lot with the Civil Rights Act. She is also a self-proclaimed communist. You know, she grew up in Alabama, rural Alabama, where she experienced a lot of racism, which is, you know, she had a strong root with that and understood race relations very early on. She's very intelligent, went through schooling, Massachusetts, traveling overseas. Fast forward, what she's mainly known for, like I said, she's an activist and a communist, so she was involved with the che-lumumba group and also had some ties with Black Panthers. She had gotten involved with the Soledad brothers, which were in Soledad prison. The Soledad brothers were John Clutchette, Fleta Drumgo, and George Jackson, who she developed a strong relationship and bond with through letter writing while they were both in jail. How she ended up in jail? Well, as I mentioned, those three men were they called themselves the Soledad brothers. They weren't actually brothers, but you know, came together and were accused of trying to kill a prison guard after several Black inmates were killed by prison guards, I think a few weeks or months prior to that accusation. And Angela Davis was involved in trying to get them out of jail, and during that time there was a prison escape, and during that prison escape she was accused of being involved with that. She was accused of murder as well as carrying weapons. They claimed that she had a bunch of guns registered in her name, and they also used evidence of her relationship with George Jackson, part of the Soledad brothers, claiming that this was an act of passion. You know, just bullshit. But that is what Angela Davis is known. She is amazing, very eloquent. It just has one of those powerful voices. As a Black woman in general, she is so powerful with how she commands a room, and it's just done so naturally, and it's because she's just so authentic. And yeah, I fuck with her. So that is what that is about her life up from when she was a child up until that point. And of course she was acquitted, for those who do not know. And then Malcolm X, most people are a lot more familiar with Malcolm X, though when I grew up, my schools did not have me read books like this at all. This is something that I had to come across or choose to read on my own. I found out about Malcolm X through my father, but he is another very strong militant activist who became a Muslim after going to jail for robbery or burglary, whatever. He was, you know, going through a lot of shit as a black man in New York City, and around that time got involved with certain people, certain things, and didn't really love himself as a black man, but of course found himself, or found his blackness in jail, as a lot of black men do. It's very interesting, but it's just a thing that happens within our community. He found Muslim ties in jail, and from that learned to accept his blackness, became a very strong voice, and basically was very pro, let's get the fuck up out of here, find our own country, us black people, and leave these white people be. But the quote that I love the most, as most black women do, is, you know, the least protected and respected and all that person in America is the black woman, which I can definitely understand and relate to. But it's very interesting because there's a slight disconnect with his support of the black woman, but how he treated his wife, or the relationship that he has with his wife, which I won't necessarily say was bad or terrible, but not something that we would consider true love in today's society. So we'll get into that. The first thing that I noticed that was very separate from Angela and Malcolm is that Angela accepted her blackness very early on in her childhood, because like she says, she grew up in rural Alabama. She was one of the first black families in that area, and in this area they used to bomb black people's homes and stuff when they would try to move there. Like, she saw and experienced some real ass shit. So very early on she accepted her blackness, even though, you know, colorism was definitely a thing. She's a light-skinned black woman, and you know, her hair was different, but she was always very pro-black and about her blackness, which I can also identify with. So obviously she mostly identifies with those who have more issues appearance wise and all that in the black community. But she accepted her blackness early on, and it was just very cut dry, which I really love about these autobiographies. Very matter of fact, both of them. And Malcolm, on the other hand, though, he did not accept his blackness very early on. You know, he experienced, I think, a bit more of a tragic childhood. You know, Angela grew up with both of her parents, but his father ended up getting killed by the Ku Klux Klan. His mother basically lost her mind. Even though she tried to keep all of her children, she could not, and eventually ended up being put into a psych ward, or like the hospital. So he just had a lot of identity issues very early on, and you know, had the whole perm situation going on in his late teens, early 20s. Just went through a series of events in order to basically be placed into jail, in which he was forced to look at his blackness probably for the first time. He had many moments in his childhood where he would have teachers growing up tell him that, you know, you're a nigga and you're not going to experience this great life that you want. You're not going to become a lawyer. You're not going to become, you know, say all these fucked up things. So it took him a lot to accept his blackness, and that is the first difference between both of them. The second thing that is different about Angela and Malcolm is who they were trying to gain access to politically. Angela was very open, you know, she obviously started focus with the black community, but she was also open enough to see our own issues within our own community, the things that we do to one another, how we judge each other, and how we bring each other down. But as time went on, her focus not only was just on the black community, but it broadened out to Asians, Latinos, whites even. not all wife, because she's very cut dry when it comes to how she feels about them and what she thinks about them. But she has that small window where she understands that there actually are some white allies out there, and it's important that we lend a hand to them and bring them on, because we need everybody in order to stop all inequality within America. That's just the truth. If you save the black man and the black woman, you're saving everybody else, because we are pretty much at the bottom of the barrel. So if you lend a hand to a black person, then you're lending a hand to an Asian person, a Latino person, those poor white people. You know what I'm saying? So she really understood that lens. Malcolm, on the other hand, he was very focused for most of his political career on black people, and he was very focused on making blacks going to the Nation of Islam. You know, very militant, only gave a shit about us, which, you know, I was down for too, because, you know, we need those leaders who make us love ourselves. You know, maybe not to that extreme in certain levels, and there was obviously a lot of violence that was going on with Nation of Islam, as there is violence in general in all cults and organizations for the most part, in some shape or form. But yeah, I was down for what he was preaching about. However, in his later years before he died, just like Martin Luther King, very interestingly enough, once they start to see the other perspective, somebody kills them. You know, he took the nation to Islam. He went there and prayed and met all these people, and met a lot of kind people that did not look like him, that had skin like white people or Asian people, and you know what I'm saying. Malcolm was exposed to a whole other world when he decided to make that trip. This trip led to him having more of an understanding of where Angela possibly would be coming from if she were as big a name at that time as him. But she was on her way, you know what I'm saying. So that is the second difference between the both of them. The third difference between Angela and Malcolm, or of course the organizations that they were targeting, or the organizations that they were a part of. As I stated before, Malcolm, he was a Muslim. He was a part of the Nation of Islam. He was all about that life. And Angela, she was not only a black woman activist, but she also was a communist, a self-proclaimed communist, and was very open about it, is still open about it. And she wasn't just a part of, she wasn't one identity. She didn't choose to identify with only one identity. And that could have happened, which she recognizes. She even slightly mentions in the book, you know, seeing how only having one lens as a black person in general can be unhealthy. So she understood herself as not just one thing, which is why she was able to look into things like communism and look into other organizations like the Latino community and see what they're going through, and understanding that you also have to support other people of color, and then they can support you, and we can all lift ourselves up from all of this. Let's get into number 4. The fourth difference that I noticed that may be more of a personal opinion, or probably pretty much is more of a personal opinion, but I felt as though it's needed to be said because this part was pretty powerful for me. Angela was more public. Her persona lit up a room, and it's mostly because it felt authentic. Not saying that Malcolm doesn't feel authentic. He felt authentic, and he also felt passionate, right? But Angela strikes me as the type of person who is not just that person when she stands up on that podium. She is also that person in the privacy of her own home, when she's surrounded by her loved ones. Like, I just feel as though I know her. I don't know her, but I don't think that she is becoming somebody or hiding certain layers of herself that she knows we would deeply dissect and tear apart. Even though, no, she does have demons. Everybody has demons, but overall, I get a very great vibe from her. I get a great vibe from Malcolm too, but he was definitely a lot more private, especially when it came to his love life, which is why I mentioned his quote about black women. He understood how black women were treated and how black men can tear black women down in a way that really crushes our entire identity, or makes us do things to become a person that we're not meant to be, because love just does that in general. And black women have done that to black men, and it's just an ongoing cycle that us millennials are recognizing, but now there's a shift being made in us understanding our value and how to value one another. But the part of this book that is really beautiful to me was actually when, what is it called? It's the epilogue that Alex Haley does after he is finished talking about Malcolm being assassinated and ending the entire autobiography, because at that point, you know, Malcolm had nothing else to say because he had passed on. But he mentions how Malcolm made a mistake and forgot to get these gifts for his twin daughters because he had a wife, he had a whole family, but he wasn't really the best husband or the best father, honestly. He wasn't really involved in their lives. He was immersed in his work and he was immersed in his persona as Malcolm X. And he was great to the public, but privately there were a lot of mishaps. And the part that I feel is very beautiful and telling is when he recognizes that he makes his mistake and he yet again forgets to be there for his daughters and his wife, he yells out loud, Alex says, and says, "God damn it, I gotta love this woman," or something along those lines, basically being like, what the hell, I need to do better, I need to be a better man to this woman because she deserves more. So it's like he knew it the whole time, but it's just like he just couldn't be that person or that man because who he is was Malcolm X. That was who he was. And he had a wife and he had children, but that wasn't his identity. That was just something he did along the way. And you know, a lot of people aren't meant to be parents, but they make children, and it's, I could say more about that, but we're not talking about that. But that was what I noticed, a very big difference between them. Malcolm always had this air of mystery about him, but with Angela, she just feels more warm and open, and I love that. So now I'm just going to quickly go into their comparisons. I decided to narrow it down to 3. What was the first one? Yes. The first comparison that I noticed about them was their matter-of-factness, okay? And this is why I love the autobiographies. I've read other black autobiographies, but these ones are some of my favorites, especially Malcolm's. Malcolm's is my all-time favorite black autobiography ever done. If anybody else has some beautiful ones, please comment below and let me know how you feel, or other ones that you think I would love, because I love Malcolm's book so much. And it's because of his tone. He says everything very matter-of-factly. It's not overdone or over dramatic and making their life into this whole big thing. He's just like, yeah, this happened. And I love that. You know, a lot of people of color, especially black people, can understand that when we speak with our grandparents, the way they tell these stories, they are so nonchalant about it. And I love that because these things were just so normal. And now we're looking back like, oh my God, you know, everything is just so blown out of proportion now because, you know, we live in a world full of narcissists who had to make their life into this whole trauma. But that's besides the point. I love how matter-of-fact Malcolm is, and his story is crazy. He goes through such a huge transformation, and it's beautiful. And to see him go from not loving himself to loving an entire community so strongly, he has made an impact for generations to come. I love him, and I love his style, and yeah. Same with Angela. You know, I like Angela's too, not as much as Malcolm's, but I still really love her book. I like hers more than Assata Shakur's. I have a whole situation or opinion on that book. But I love Angela's. She's very matter-of-fact, intelligent, to the point, and just tells a story. Just tells a story, doesn't make a drama of it, just states facts, but also includes those bits of passion that are important. And that's what I love about them. So that's the first comparison. The second comparison, hold on. The second comparison that I found was knowledge is power, okay? Angela, from a very young age, is already very intelligent. She was blessed enough to have 2 parents who had pretty well-paying jobs. They were intelligent. I think her mother was a teacher. I forget what her father does, but I think her father actually was a professor. Yeah, her father was a professor, so they're both teachers, and very knowledgeable, and pass that on to her, and she takes it to a whole other level, you know, really expands her mind, expands her horizons, and that's beautiful. And just seeing how she ends up you know, becoming acquitted, it's because of her doing all this research, because of her connections. She really like defended herself. She had a team and she defended herself and she won, and that's a very hard thing to do, especially in that time in the 70s with the Black Panthers. Like, they were trying to get our asses. So she is amazing. So knowledge is power. Just watching her do that lets you know that the more I know, the better I am, the more I can protect myself. You know, it's communication, finding access to things, resources. That's very important. And then Malcolm, you know, you see him living this treacherous, reckless life, and it's not until he's in jail and he's forced to read and write and actually instill something in himself that you start to recognize again that knowledge is power. The more knowledgeable he becomes about himself, even if it's some bullshit story religion-wise, everything else that it was about allowed him to connect to other things and read other things that could further expand his knowledge and his lens and his horizons. That was really important. That part is where a switch goes off, when he starts to receive knowledge and take in knowledge and do what he will with it. So that's the second comparison that I noticed about them. And then the third comparison was travel. Travel, travel, and travel. I know and I understand, because I'm in the same boat. Traveling costs money, and not all Black people can do that right now. But we all, in some way, shape, or form, if you have the chance or you have the ability or there's something that you can do in order to experience traveling, whether in the States or outside of the States. I'm mostly talking about outside of the States, but you know, even within this country, you can learn a lot about yourself and other people. But travel, that's what I learned from both Malcolm and from Angela. You know, when Malcolm makes the Mecca trip, he meets all these different type of people, and that expands his lens, and he starts to recognize that, you know what, maybe not all white people are evil. Maybe it's not just about Black people. Maybe it's about everybody. And Angela, just traveling in general, from college to graduate school to becoming a professor at UCLA, like, she experienced a whole world. She did a lot of more overseas things than Malcolm, and that just further allowed her to recognize where her beliefs lied, where her power lies, and added to the knowledge she already attained. So, whew, that was a lot. My throat is really doing a lot right now. I could have gone more deeply into, you know, what I feel as though us Black people can take away from this, but I think everything I said pretty much sums that up. You know, travel, expand your mind at all costs, stand for something, and be fearless. You know, there's more that we can take away from this, but I think those things that I just said are very, very important. Us being ourselves and us fighting for something and fighting for one another and opening our hearts and our minds to love and loving one another correctly and truthfully. That's really important, and I hope you guys take that away from this. But the next segment for Black History Month, I'm going to be comparing two Toni Morrison books. Toni Morrison is my favorite Black author. And of course, I, as a Black woman, couldn't spend this month not paying ode to her and, you know, my Black woman. So tune in next time, my next video. And if you made it this far, thank you so, so much for watching. And yeah, enjoy your Black History Month, Black people.